Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Jamestown Public School Board to order. It is Monday, July 15th, 2024, 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. I'd like to recognize all those in the audience, including our incoming board members. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on in our agenda, we have our school board norms. Diane, would you please read the school board norms?
I'd be glad to. Some of the faces will change today, but the school board norms remain the same. The board developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, execute all duties of the school board in compliance with North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, commit to assessing board effectiveness, and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you, Diane. And we have no public communication tonight. We're going to move on to our old business consent agenda. So we're going to cover the old business consent agenda first before we seat our new board members, and then we will move on into organization of the board and then the new business consent agenda, all right? So we have the old business consent agenda. And if anyone has any conflicts of interest with this also, that comes up later in the agenda, please state that. Otherwise, is there a motion for the old business consent agenda? Motion by Aaron, second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for to approve the old business consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. So moving on to organization of the board for 2024 to 2025 school year. We'd like to welcome our new board members, Owen McKenna and Jake Meyer. And as you come and get seated, we'll put Jake over here and Owen over here. I'm going to ask Diane and Gail to come forward. We have a little item for you to honor your years on the board. Go ahead and step in for the picture. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And Diane's plaque says 13 years and Gail is 4 years. And we'd like to thank them for their service and welcome our new board members this evening. So moving on our agenda now is the time for election of officers. And so we're going to elect the president first. All we need is a motion. We do not need a second for that. Just a nomination. Yep. So opening the floor for nominations for president. Dan.
I nominate Heidi Larson for president.
Heidi Larson. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Do we need to do a... Yeah. Is there a motion to cast an unanimous vote for this?
I move we cast unanimous ballot for Heidi Larson for president.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second for that? And a second by Jamie. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Moving on to vice president. Is there a motion for a nomination? Melissa?
I didn't talk to him about this beforehand, but I nominate Dan Tweeten.
There's a nomination for Dan Tweeten for vice president. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If not, is there a motion to cast unanimous ballot for Dan Tweeten for vice president? Motion by Jamie. Is there a second? Second by Aaron. We have a motion, a second, for Dan Tweeten for vice president. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. So moving on to our agenda, are there any conflicts of interest to declare now that we have a new board? Any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? Moving on to the schedule to set date, time, place of regular meetings, and the annual plan for board education. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Is there a second? Second by Dan. So we have a motion and a second to schedule set date, time, and place of regular meeting, including our annual plan for board education. Any discussion? Any discussion? Yes, Melissa.
I know it's just me that's usually late, but I didn't know if a 5:30 time instead of a 5:15 start time would work for anybody else.
Okay. Okay. There's been any discussion on 5:30 versus 5:15, changing the time? Does that pose a problem for, scheduling problem for anyone at the school? No? Okay. We would need a,
It's your meeting.
yep, we need a motion for that. Is that a motion, Melissa?
And if it's just me, then
Yeah.
I think we have it. Was there a motion on that?
Well, it was a point of under discussion during, and so I didn't know if there was a secondary motion.
I guess I just didn't know if anybody else had trouble getting here on time, like I did, and because I'm waiting for my daughter or my son-in-law to get home, I can't leave work early or something,
Yeah,
so.
some days it is challenging to be seated and ready to go by 5:15. Jason?
Another side of that too is, when we think about our public attending meetings, that might be helpful in that way too, so.
Okay. Steve?
It certainly works better for me at 5:30.
Okay. Jason?
I would move that we change our starting time for our regular board meetings to 5:30
Okay. And then
per the same dates as listed.
the same dates and the annual plan of board education in place is the same, okay? So we have a motion for changing the time only. Is there a second on that motion? A second by Steve. So we have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the 5:30 motion? Okay. If not, let's take a vote on the 5:30. What you're voting on is yes for 5:30 with the same date and place of regular meetings, including the annual plan for board education. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion approved. Now we don't need to go back to the other motion, right? So,
So you're technically voting on an amendment.
amendment, yep. So we, yep, so we amended it to 5:30, so we don't have to go back to the
Just to
original.
clarify
Yep.
for the record.
For the record, that was an amendment. Yep, you got that, Amy? Okay, everyone's good with that? Okay. The next item is set school board compensation for the 2024 to 2025 school year. This hasn't, what was that? Do we have to vote on the regular motion then?
Yes,
Okay, we have to
you
go
vote
back.
on the amendment.
Okay,
That
so now we have to go back to the regular motion of same thing, but 5:15.
No, the motion was
it's a
amended,
five.
so now, so you voted on the amendment.
Yep,
So now the motion has been amended to 5:30 for all
Yes,
of those dates.
for all
and
those dates.
That's not what you're voting on.
okay. So we're going back to vote on the 5:30 portion of it. And we have a motion, a second for that, correct? Motion, second. And then 5:30, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Approved. Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself here. The school board compensation. So I wanted to bring that up. We have not changed. It has been quite a few years. It may be 8 years since we've adjusted school board compensation. And it is part of our agenda today. The amount is, I believe, was $4,000 flat rate, $4,600 for the school board president. Is this something we want to move forward with, or if the board wishes, do we want to have a further study of that and move forward? It's totally up to the board. So, Aaron?
Yeah, I'd like to move to increase the compensation for the school board members to $5,000 per year and board president compensation at $6,000 per year.
There's a motion on the table for increased compensation for $5,000 a year and $6,000 for the president. Is there a second? Second by Dan. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Jason?
Is this, the fact that we're paid, is that in century code? Could you address that a little bit?
I can. It's set by board district policy. So in policy, which is linked to this agenda, is where you establish what the compensation rate is. We've done a study in the last couple of years, and the board determined at that time not to. At that time, a couple of years ago, you were on the low end of average. I think this would probably get you closer to in line of what average is. It varies by district, some very low, some higher. It really just depends on what the will of the board is, but it's set by policy.
And then I also want to, just for historical purposes, make the board aware, when we did set it at this rate, we no longer, we had a schedule where we would pay per meeting on top of the school board, which became a tracking nightmare. So what if you only were at half of the meeting? Or it just, we had a spreadsheet this long, and it was time consuming for the staff to each month go through that meeting schedule, and so we eliminated it. So we do not get paid anything additional for the meetings. We do try to spread the meetings out across the board, but we no longer get paid for meetings like we had in the past. So I just want to, just for historical purposes, bring that forth also. So right now we have a motion for $5,000 for board members, $6,000 for president. Any other discussion? Dan?
Last year we did look at the comments. That's
what you're referring to? Yep.
I thought it was 2 years, 2 or 3 years ago. Maybe it was last
2 years
year.
ago, I think, maybe. Might have been 2.
It was in recent history.
Yes.
We have looked, every couple of years, the board has asked that I collect some data on what is happening collectively, just because it does vary so much by district. So that's, about that time.
Steve?
I don't want to complicate things, but I was just wondering, rather than just doing a set amount, if we might consider maybe like attaching it to whatever raise the percentage that we did in the, like for the teachers. If it was 3% last time, then the next school year or whatever, we would do 3% as well. It's just a thought.
Any other discussion on that?
Just a thought towards that, you could do both. You could set, your responsibility right now is to set for this upcoming year, but if you wanted to revise the policy to include some kind of, annual increase,
Cost of
you
living
certainly
increase
could
or
do that in the
something like that.
future.
Yeah.
Wouldn't prohibit you from passing the motion that's done now. You could still look at both.
Any other discussion? Dan?
Just for comparison, that would give us about a 2.7% from the time that this policy was last revised.
In 8 years?
In 8 years, yes,
Okay.
roughly.
Any other discussion? Questions? Okay. So right now, the motion is 5,000 for board members, 6,000 for president. We've had some discussion on attaching it in the future to, not part of the motion, but some discussion that we will want to consider for sure. So let's do a roll call vote, Christy, probably on this one, since it's our compensation.
Okay, Jason Rohr. Jacob Meyer.
No.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
Steve Veldkamp.
Yes.
Melissa Gleason. Owen McKenna.
Yes.
Jamie Bear. And Heidi Larson.
Yes. Where are we at? I didn't count.
5 yes, 4 no.
Okay, motion passed, and so we'll revise that, as well as maybe perhaps the finance committee could take kind of move your ideas, Steve, to the Finance Committee for some discussion, and we can look at that for the future to revise that policy. Any other discussion before we move on to our next item? Okay. E, board member committee assignments. There's a list in the Google Drive. Does anyone have any questions on that? And I'll entertain a motion for that. Motion by Aaron. Second by Jamie. We have a motion, a second for approval of the board member committee assignments. Any discussion? Any discussion? Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. So now we're moving under our new business consent agenda. So it is our annual meeting. So this consent agenda has just all the regular annual things that we need approval on. So you can look through that. And is there a motion? Motion by Aaron to approve the new business consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second to approve the new business consent agenda. Any discussion? I have to find the end of it here. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving into our regular meeting now. Under correspondence, we do have a thank you from Kim Caseman on appreciation for the clock for retirement, and we wish her the best. Under board education, we have number 1, strategic competency, strategic plan update. And as Dr. Lick, I'm going to turn this over to you, but I also want to thank Aaron Roberts for making me a nice color-coded chart, because I'm a very visual person and I really enjoyed being able to, at a quick snapshot, look at what we're covering for the year in a color-coded format. So thank you, Aaron.
Okay, so you do have in your drive Board Memo 107 that outlines the process for revision, the recommendations by focus area, and then our progress monitoring. So I'll just walk through the process for revision from the, as the board is aware, we have a 5-year strategic plan, but we revise that plan annually to make sure that we are still in line with the vision of the district and the direction of the board. So that requires us to revisit the goals and our focus areas annually. And so how that works, we start the year with the goals that have been approved by the board. We progress monitor where we're at. In the past, we've done that by focus area, which gets to be, fairly comprehensive. Each focus area has 4 or 5 goals. What we've done in the last year was from April to June, we had a series of 5 fairly comprehensive progress monitoring, and we're going to make a shift, and we're going to do it by goal, but I'll talk about that in a bit. But that's where we start. We progress monitored in the spring of the year, and each of those focus areas, we learned a lot about that process. Got great feedback related to those goals. So as soon as June 3rd's last progress monitoring was completed, we got to work on revision recommendations from a central office standpoint. We made recommendations to the strategic plan committee, and that committee looked to revise those goals again. And so those recommendations are before you for the revised 24-25 iteration of this strategic plan. So I thought it would be valuable if we went through in the focus area and just talk a little bit about more of a 10,000-foot view of how those goals changed. Non-substantive changes, some of it is clarification, some of it adding progress or adding a little bit of clarity or changing metrics, but I felt it would be valuable if we walked through those goals that changed. Again, a 10,000-foot view. So in Strategic Focus 1, which is Culture of Learning, there was actually 3 revisions to those goals in Goal 2. We revised this to align, so not a substantive change. We were surveying staff to look at culture, work environment, and so we're aligning the metric to the survey tool. We use Vital Network. Their categories are care and support, time management, and voice and decision making. So we revised the goal to align with those categories, and then we added a specific metric from the survey. So you might want to look at the board memo, and you might want to also have the strategic plan up, just in the event that you have questions about those goals and the changes. Also in Culture of Learning, Goal 3, we had a number of different baseline inventory goals. So we're inventorying different areas and then using that as a baseline metric. So in a few of the baseline inventories, we categorized them based on the results that we found. And in this one is one of the examples. We saw categories of practices that emerged. And so not all of those categories, we wanted to leverage some. Some we saw that have greater need than others. And so we wanted to hyper-focus on the categories that we wanted to see enhanced. So in Culture of Learning, Goal 3, the category area that we wanted to see enhanced was parent engagement events, family involvement in learning and cultural engagement. So that's where you're going to see the goals targeted towards those particular categories. In Goal 4, this was similar, another inventory goal. And in this one, we're targeting specifically the category of belonging. So as we move into Leadership for Learning, there were 2 different goals that were changed. Goal 2, that was revised slightly. We wanted to articulate the process between 24-25 school year and 25-26 school year as we look to establish non-academic skills. In Leadership for Learning, Goal 4, that's another inventory goal, and so our category focus was community engagement inside the school. You've seen a few of the inventories already that align pretty closely with what the board self-assessment outlined, which is ensuring that we're getting a greater level of community engagement. Moving into engagement of learning, that is strategic focus 3. In Goal 1, so this one probably has the largest amount of change compared to what you saw in the progress monitoring. So how we defined engagement, we take an engagement survey, and there's 3 categories based on the results. So students are classified into 3 different categories. They're either committed, they're compliant, or they're disengaged by this survey. And so when we defined engagement in the first iteration of the plan, we combined the scores for compliant and committed. And as we did that, we felt, boy, that's certainly not aspirational enough. Being compliant versus being committed, there's a difference in engagement levels there. And so we revised that goal to only be those that are categorized, the students that are categorized as being committed, the highest level of the 3. We also added a goal related to sub-goals, so each of the different goals within committed. And then we added a specific target to decrease the number of students that are disengaged. So we want to decrease the number of students that are disengaged and increase the number of students that are committed. So that is, if you look back in the progress monitoring, you'll see pretty significantly different numbers between what our targets were in those different, or what we reported in progress monitoring and our goals. So I just don't want you to be confused. So that is only those that are at the highest level of commitment. In strategic focus, engagement of learning goal 3, we specified the target for chronic absenteeism as 12% or less. In goal 4, in engagement of learning, it's another inventory goal. In closely aligning with engagement, that categorical focus is academic relevancy or college and career readiness, depending on the level of the student. In growth and learning, there were 3 changes there too. In goal 1, we revised to clarify that this was a goal for 2030, and this is the 80-15-5 goal. So 80% of students in core instruction, 15% in core plus more, 5% in replacement core. So that is a 2030 goal. We also then added levels we added goals at each level. So this is what we want at the elementary level, at the middle level, at the high school. We wanted to be sure that we were looking holistically and not living in the aggregate. In Goal 3, that was revised to clarify, again, we're talking about a 2030 goal and looking at top quartile proficiency in 2030, and then also adding what we're looking at each level. So rather than looking at the district level, we're looking at elementary, middle school, and high school. In Goal 4, this goal was revised to include specific targets for growth. So that included a sub-goal for the number of observations, how many element ratings that would be, looked at growth by cohort model, and looked at what types of ratings we're seeing from those observations as well. And then in Strategic Focus 5, resource management and planning, there's no suggested revisions to the plan. In terms of progress monitoring, we created an annual plan, which will be part of the approval of the strategic plan approval. That outlines that each of the goals will be discussed at varying board meetings rather than waiting till the last 5 meetings of the year and kind of giving you, giving the superintendent a lot of floor and 45, 50 minutes to talk about goals. You will do those in almost every meeting, 1 or 2 goals that are aligned kind of from a time horizon standpoint that we can do. And so that'll be part of that annual plan. So progress monitoring will happen at every meeting, just like board education, as opposed to just a summative spring large overview. So I think it gives us a chance to dig a little bit deeper into those results, probably ask a few more questions, and provide a little bit more detail to those goals and where we're at. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions or comments regarding the strategic competency, strategic plan update provided? Aaron.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more commentary to that, in that dashboard that I did put together, I did differentiate between some of the metrics as being either driver metrics or results metrics. Some of the things that we're doing are proactive engagements with the students, with the staff, and in order to affect the results of proficiencies or engagements. So that kind of helps to understand some of the relationship aspects between each of the different metrics and goals and stuff, as opposed to trying to understand how this aggregate of information is all coming together. So just wanted to point that out, just that's something new that was indicated in this revision.
Yep, thank you, Aaron. And any other questions or comments? And it's getting closer. These revisions will help a little more concise.
Yeah, and I think the changes this year are more incremental than as what we did last year with the more groundbreaking and structural, architectural to the plan. So that'll be helpful in get year to year and getting some consistency in how we're looking at this stuff.
Yep. Dr. Leck.
One thing I forgot to mention too, we got some feedback. We know that we are in an accreditation cycle that's coming up in the fall. So we aligned in the last shift, we aligned those goals with the framework outlined by our accreditation agency, Cognia. And the feedback we got was very positive related to this framework, the metrics that the board has selected, and the feedback we got, like I said, was very positive, that we're certainly moving in the right direction in terms of the framework of the strategic plan and the makeup of the goals.
And if you look at some of those metrics, they're fairly aggressive metrics in the next 5 years. So we'll have to keep progress monitoring and seeing where we're at. So, any other questions from the board or discussion? Okay. Moving on, Dr. Leck, Superintendent's report.
Okay, you have my written report. I'll touch on some of these items a little bit more than others. In personnel, one thing to note, you'll have later in the agenda a request for release from contract from Ms. Caroline Thompson. She has served as an instructional coach in Jamestown High School. And the recommendation I have is to release Ms. Thompson, even though it is late in the season for such a thing. We don't anticipate the hiring of a full-time instructional coach at this time. It's certainly not late in the season. We do believe that we'll be able to have a short-term solution similar to what we did with Mrs. Schrader at the middle school instructional coach. So we do feel like we have some options there. Certainly not perfect, the timing is far from ideal, but if the board were to release, then we would have an option, I think, moving forward. PERS changes, I've provided a lot of detail for you. In a previous superintendent's report, I started outlining a little bit the difference between the DB plans and the DC plans. For those not as familiar with those things, that can feel a little foreign. So I provided a little bit more detail with the PERS changes. PERS is changing from a pension, a defined benefit plan, to a defined contribution plan. Think of like a 401k. And so that creates some challenges. And so I want to maybe make a couple of key points. I'd certainly encourage the board to look through this in greater detail, but a few big takeaways from this section of my report that the board should just be considering. Number one, you're looking at a fairly significant increase in responsibility and tracking for the business office related to these changes. Now they're having 6 plans to account for, 2 different defined benefit plans. They have, and this is just in PERS. They have TFFR, 2 different types of, multiple individuals in TFFR that to cover as well. But just in PERS, 6 total options. There's the PERS DB grandfather plan, the PERS non-grandfather DB plan, and now 4 different levels for a defined contribution plan. That's a lot to track with different funding levels, different matches, and so it's a big lift and an ask for the business office. The second big takeaway, and one that I struggle with a little bit, is one of the changes that was made is it relates to the employer contribution. In a perfect world, the employer contribution, regardless of the classification of those in PERS, would be the same. What you contribute towards somebody's retirement should, in a perfect world, be the same, no matter if they were hired before January 1st or after January 1st. In a perfect world, that's the same. In the new rollout after January 1st, that's not going to be the same. And I struggle with the inequity of those things, but that is not a board decision to make. That's what has been determined at the state level legislatively. That's what it will be. And I've outlined what those different ranges are. In the top of page 3, you'll see the different options, which leads me to probably my biggest concern is that once an employee makes a contribution decision, and this is not typical for defined contribution plans, they do it for life. It's done in perpetuity. They don't change it. If an employee makes the decision, I want to make the minimum contribution, that's 4% for an employee contribution, and then a 5.26% match. That is what they have done now. As long as they are employed with us, they have made that contribution rate. So from our standpoint in the business office, it really comes down to a lot of communication, a lot of awareness, and a lot of educating our new staff that once they make this decision, if they want to maximize that match, which is what we want them to get as the highest match that they can get, because that aligns more closely with that employer contribution. Then we have to do a lot of educating on the onboarding process to make sure that they are maximizing that match and getting as close as they can to their peers in that employer contribution. And as soon as they make that decision, they don't get to change it again. And that is really an unfortunate, probably the most unfortunate aspect of this change, is they make a decision. I think we've all been in different stages of our lives. The decisions we might make when we're 25 are vastly different than the decisions we would make when we're 50. And so to put a plan in place that doesn't allow for that change is unfortunate. So we have to educate people and make sure that they're aware. The last thing I'll draw your attention to is just because there's such a shift and such a change and a big impact to staff, we also felt it was important to engage in other political subs that are also having the same discussion. So tomorrow we'll be meeting with Parks and Rec, City of Jamestown, Stutzman County, Central Valley Health here in Jamestown Public Schools, and we'll facilitate a discussion on what that transition looks like, how we're going to educate people, probably sharing some resources, how can we do this better together, so when we make this shift, that we do it for the best of all of our employees. So just wanted to pass that along. The virtual office hours, that started. You can see the dates that I'm doing that. School board onboarding has begun. We got a great idea from the mentors and actually through discussion of what common policies they've used as reference, and I created a reference document for that as well. I thought I'd share it with the board. We'll talk about this reference guide at our next onboarding meeting, which is 4 o'clock before our next board meeting. We should probably change that to, I'll send an email now that we've changed our meeting date. We might go a little bit later. But common policy reference, and that's really something that's, I think, a good reference for the whole board. I won't talk about revisions. You've already had some discussion on that. I want to draw attention to what I think is really a great thing. The summer meals program has been a huge win for our community. I asked for the number of meals through July 5th, and over 10,000 meals have been served to students over the summer, about 2,500 meals per week. So I think that shows two things. One, that they're doing a great job. Two, that you're talking a significant need in our community. It's so popular, in fact, and so well received that the USDA was out here last week visiting with Cindy Wall and Jackie Russell, who runs the summer meals program, trying to find out how are you having so many meals in Jamestown, and how can we replicate what you are doing in our food service program, and what can we learn so others can operate at as high a level as what our food service is doing. We actually have the number one, we're number one for total summer meals in the state of North Dakota. When you consider our size relative to other districts, that's a pretty significant, it's pretty significant to be number one in Jamestown. So we're, absolutely a great job by our food service staff in communicating and also in practice to have that many meals. It's a real testament to what they're doing and the passion that they're showing for the program. A couple different finance items. We did have a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, a tax abatement and tax exemption request that was made. You can see the application is linked. Initially, that request was a 5-year tax exemption of 100% on the building. Now, I will separate, I think it's important that the board is aware when we have these exemptions, it's not on land, it's only on the building, okay? The land would be at 100%, or 100% valuation, no exemption. I did attend that city council meeting, and their negotiated proposal back was a scaled exemption, 100% for the first 2 years, 75%, and then 50% for the last 2 years. And I believe that I did not get an update on if that was accepted or not, but I assume that it was. So that was contingent, but I believe that to be the case. If different than that, I'll share it with the board when I get that information. I had shared information previously about an annexation request. I did attend that hearing as well, and I was able to provide testimony on behalf of the district. Ultimately, annexations are allowed by North Dakota Century Code. The procedure was done correctly. I think they also tried hard to ensure that the smallest amount of land was recommended for annexation, which is really what I think the district can expect and what would be approved by the state board as well, because this has to go through another layer of approval beyond the county. I think they did a good job in making sure that that was there. One thing I will say is this had to be approved by the state board prior to July 1st for it to be in this tax year. So yes, the annexation was approved. It will likely be approved at the state board level, but it won't impact this tax year because it wasn't received and acted upon by the state board prior to July 1st. We will have some policy changes. Normally in this meeting, we look at policy AAC as a revision, as a review. There will be changes coming rather than approve that policy or review that policy and then see updated changes coming. That's a process that comes. We're part of NDSBA Policy Services. However, whenever we get policies, we don't just that's a nice boilerplate, but we still review those policies, some more than others. And this is a policy that we'll review pretty significantly prior to bringing any changes forward. We have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure that there's alignment between federal law and state law and school district policy. Policies like this take quite a bit of time, and so I appreciate your patience as we look to adopt an appropriate and effective policy for the district on this. Later on in your agenda, you'll act on a JVCTC architect. I've kind of outlined the process used there. Jamestown Public Schools has been asked to participate in a presentation for the National School Boards Association Conference in Kentucky. I've included the presentation description there. I think that's a nice opportunity for the district. There is an initiated measure, as you may be aware, to abolish property tax. Over the next couple of meetings, I'll provide more awareness and education on what that measure is, what that might mean for school districts, Jamestown Public Schools in particular. A lot to unpack there. And then reallocated funds. We did request and were awarded reallocated funds for Title IIA, professional development mostly. That is going to go towards the expenses of our new ELA curriculum at the elementary level. Two exciting spotlights. We had members of our high school participate in the Skills USA competition in Atlanta. And then we also had an alumni, Jacob Roberts, who was, like I said, a JHS alumni and a graduate of the North Dakota State College of Science, and lead machinist at Bidmock, placed second in CNC programming. So, a nice big award there as well. And then the summer meals, like I said, USDA came out to observe our program because we were, highest output in the state of North Dakota. So that's certainly something to celebrate. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions from the board? Dr. Leck, can you, for anyone listening, not sure how to access summer meals, can you just share a little bit of information about that?
If anybody has interest in summer meals, they should call 252-1950 and talk to our food service department, and they will get you
And what
set up.
ages does it?
It is all students up to the
All
age of
students
18.
up to 18,
All children
okay.
up to the age of 18.
Age 18, okay,
Yep.
all right. Yep, so if anyone is interested in more information on that, just contact the school. And
Yeah,
we'll get you-
one of the things that if you've been involved in this process before, that's a change, is one of the flexibilities that I think has really made a difference here is the proxy. In the past, every student had to go and collect the meal themselves. Now you can do it by proxy, so one person can come and get the meals for the family. And so that shift in itself and our communication of that and, allowance, flexibility towards that has really made a difference in the total meals. And so if people are feeling that's a derailer for them, they can't bring all of their kids there to get the meals like they had to in the past, we made that a lot easier now.
Sounds good, thank you. Any other questions, Melissa?
I think you can also sign up at the schools that are
Hosting, okay, that sounds good, yep. Just want to make sure we get the information out. Jason?
Back to the PERS retirement. Say an employee would change FTEs or positions within a district, or even go to a separate entity in the state. Is that still a one and done as of now for selection of the plan?
That's my interpretation of it, yes. They make that decision as long as they are eligible for PERS. A lot to roll out between now and January 1st. A lot of questions to be asked, but that's my understanding of it, yes.
Anything else? All right, if not, moving on. Under new business, we have activities, and then under buildings and grounds, is approval to hire, is it RET Architecture for JVCTC project. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan, second by Aaron. We have a motion, a second for approval to hire RET Architecture for JVCTC project. Any discussion? Melissa?
Just had a question on that matrix that's used to decide that. Did that also include like a point or half a point or whatever we had decided with other things do you take into consideration local if that was even applicable in this case?
Not applicable in this circumstance, but we do consider those as when we create our scales for any of bid projects.
Any other discussion? Oh, yep. Any other discussion? Okay. If not, we have a motion and a second for approval to hire Red Architecture for JVCTC project. Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. And Amy's mentioning that we did not approve the strategic plan update at the top. So let's take a moment and move. Oh, it's under, oh. Yep, oh, yep, we're coming to it. Yep, that's okay, yep. But thank you for the reminder, Amy. We definitely want to make sure we get that approved. So thank you very much for reminding us of that. Number 3, curriculum assessment instruction. A, approval of updated courses for 2024 to 2025 school year. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie. Is there a second? Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of updated courses for the 2024 to 2025 school year. Any other discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under finance, you can find the 2023 to 2024 general fund balance for your information, as well as the 2023 to 2024 summary of debt for your information. C, approval of the 2024 to 2025 certificate of levy. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Is there a second? Second. Second by Jason. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 to 2025 certificate of levy. Any discussion? Any discussion? Dr. Luck?
Just a comment, this does not represent any mill increase or change from last year.
Yep, good information. So we have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 to 2025 certificate of levy. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under D, approval of a 2024 to 2025 preliminary budget and the executive summary for your information. Is there a motion? Is there a motion by Melissa? Is there a second? Second by Aaron. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 to 2025 preliminary budget as well as the executive summary for information. Any discussion? Aaron.
Just for clarification on the food service side, is expected to be some change on the revenue side when the fee structure comes out, right? So there's a significant deficit in there now, but we don't have information yet that we need to in order to figure out what that is really going to be.
Yes, a big driver is meal prices, and that has not been established yet, so you see a budget based on last year's meals, the value of last year's meals, those costs. So, we have increased expenditures, but we don't have the increased meal cost yet, so you see a larger deficit, so you will see an increase, or a closing of that gap, I should say, but also an increase to those meal costs.
Okay. Any other discussion? So we have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 to 2025 preliminary budget and the executive summary. Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under operations, we have approval of the revised strategic plan as well as the annual plan for progress monitoring. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan. Second by Aaron. We have a motion and a second for approval of revised strategic plan as well as the approval for annual plan for progress monitoring. Any discussion? And we had some discussion earlier on this. Any other discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under personnel, approved to hire for the 2024 to 2025 school year upon a successful background check and appropriate licensure, Brady Birch. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa. And second by Dan. We have a motion and a second for approval to hire Brady Birch for the 2024 to 2025 school year upon a successful background check and appropriate licensure. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and welcome Brady Birch. Approval of request of release of contract for Caroline Thompson for the 2024 to 2025 school year. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron, second by Melissa. We have a motion and a second for approval request of release of contract for Caroline Thompson for the 2024 to 2025 school year. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and thanks to Caroline for the work that she did at our high school. Under policies and procedures, we have nothing. Under 8, approval of a tuition agreement for, number 1, 5th grade student to attend Pingree Buchanan Public School for the 2024-25 school year, and a pre-K student to attend Medina Public School for the 2024-25 school year. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa. Is there a second? Second by Dan. We have motion and second for approval of tuition agreements for a 5th grader student to attend Pingree Buchanan School and for the 2024-25 school year, pre-K student to attend Medina Public School for the 2024-2025 school year. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Nothing under other. Items for future agenda. Does the board have any items for future agenda that they'd like to discuss now? If not, if you have any items, please let Dr. Luck or myself know, and we will look at a timing to put it on an agenda. Under meetings to be scheduled, we have a school board meeting on Monday, August 19th at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. There's the back to school, hard to believe this is coming, the back to school breakfast on Tuesday, August 20th, 2024 at 7:30 a.m. in the high school commons area. Are there any other meetings that we haven't scheduled that we're missing? Okay, all right. And so we have those 2 meetings. Oh, yes, Dan.
So it's no longer 5:15, it's going to be at
5:30, yes, thank you, yes, yep, at 5:30. I was gonna remember that, then I didn't, so, at 5:30 p.m., yep, Monday, August 19th, at 5:30 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room right here in the middle school. And then our back-to-school breakfast Tuesday, August 20th, 7:30 a.m. in the high school commons area. For your monthly superintendent evaluation, we have board relations and section 4 curriculum and student support services. Also like to thank you for all your support for the next year, and we're looking forward to having a very productive 2024 to 2025 academic year. So thank you very much. There being no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned.